Hello everyone, welcome back. I got some really good ones for you today on this Monday, October 6th, 2025. A lot's been going on with the markets and the economy. That's what we're going to be focusing on for today's video. So welcome back. Glad you made it. Glad we could hang out together. You know, it's been a while since my last video. Apologies for that. Needed to unplug for a bit, take a little bit of a sabbatical, okay? But I've been well and hope the same for you. And it's time to bust the rust off, get the channel back on an even keel, and continue to do what we have been doing since the inception of this channel, which is anticipate instead of react, maintain the high ground, simply put, print, okay? We've been focused on this channel for the last few years on things like gold, which is performing extremely well right now, Bitcoin, which is performing extremely well right now, mega cap tech, which is performing extremely well right now. We have been very bearish on the dollar, saying, you know, cash is trash, don't hold cash, don't hold bonds. That turned out to be the case. So we're doing extremely well. You know, there's a lot of deflationists on YouTube that aren't discerned. You guys are going to tell you, oh, save cash, hide under a rock, wait for the crash. And they've been saying that for year after year after year after year. And not only are they wrong, so they're wrong about the markets, just like quite binary, like you're objectively been wrong about the market. And because you're wrong about the market, all that cash you saved lost about 75% of its value. So what now? You know, what do we do now, Mr. Crash Caller? So glad I haven't done that on this channel, and I don't want to give them too much of a hard time. You know, in this kind of environment, up is down, down is up. So it's hard to be discerned, but thankfully we've had a pretty good handle of what's going on for the last few years. We've really done a good job of wrapping our arms around policy, mostly bad policies coming out of like the Fed and the Treasury, and even like the commercial banks. So we've had a pretty good handle on the financial engineering that's destroying the middle class, destroying our country. If you're making 100K a year, you're buying about 50,000 worth of stuff with it. So even if you're making a really good salary this last few years, or what would be, you know, pretty good, you're getting flushed down the toilet, guys. Savers are getting eviscerated. Yeah, people living on fixed income, like let's say you're like retired and you're getting like, we'll call it $1,800 a month in Social Security, like you're getting completely flushed. So it's been really bad. You know, it's come at a great cost, you guys. Like we can kind of pat ourselves on the back for being discerned and for accurately calling the knock-on effects of policy and what the implications would be for asset prices. Like we did that well, but it's come at a great cost, you guys, because if you're not bricked up with gold, if you're not sitting on a pile of gold coins like a dragon right now, you're getting eviscerated and you're watching your country implode. Go ahead and bring up, and you think I'm being hyperbolic, like eviscerated, implode. You're just saying that because you're trying to freak us out. First of all, I'm never going to come out here and try to freak you guys out. We should always stay cool, calm, and collected. And second of all, I'm not being hyperbolic, guys. Gold's up 50% this year. So year to date, gold's up 50%. The gold value doesn't change, but the gold price does. What I mean by that is 1 ounce of gold is always equal to 1 ounce of gold. 1 ounce of gold got you a tunic, belt, sandals in ancient Rome, and it gets you a nice suit today. So 1 ounce of gold is 1 ounce of gold. That's the store of value. That's the unit of account. So if the price of that 1 ounce gold coin was 1,000 per ounce in 2015, which that's when gold bottomed, about 1071, somewhere in there. I was actually in a coin shop the day gold bottomed in like January of 2015. So it's gone from about 1070 spot to 4,000 in 10 years. That means in real terms, the dollar's lost about 75% of its value in the last 10 years. Sounds crazy, but that's why you look at real estate, you go, oh, that's a bubble. But then you look at mega cap tech and you go, oh, that's a bubble. And then you look at gold and you go, oh, that's a bubble. And then you look at Bitcoin and go, oh, that's a bubble. Guys, if everything's in a bubble, nothing's in a bubble. The currency just collapsed. You're witnessing a currency collapse. And that's what kind of we've been talking about on this channel. Now, I will say I was a little bit more optimistic in prior years because I was hoping wages would keep up. You know, I don't care that gold's 4,000 per ounce as long as my wage has kept up with that. But the reality is wages are going up 3% per year. Gold's going up 50% per year. That's in real terms a cut of about 47% per year to your pay. Guys, that's what's going on, okay? So if everything's in a bubble, nothing's in a bubble. You're just watching the currency collapse, right? You're watching other countries not want to hold U.S. treasuries. Like, I'm an American, I think cash is trash and bonds are trash. So, imagine being like from Malaysia and holding a bunch of U.S. treasuries on your balance sheet. You want to get rid of those. You want to get them into gold. You want to get them into Bitcoin. We've been seeing that. And you want to get them into U.S. equities too. I'm sure a lot of these foreign countries do still like our stock market. Our stock market is very hot. We have the corporations. We have the capitalized markets. NVIDIA is still a great place to be, regardless of who and where you are on planet Earth. But one of the reasons NVIDIA is now a $4.5 trillion company is also because the dollar has imploded. Guys, trillion-dollar networks didn't even exist pre-COVID. So before COVID-19, there was no such thing as trillion-dollar companies. And I was watching the tape back then. There was no such thing as a trillion-dollar company. Now we have several of them, okay? And we don't have a first minted trillionaire yet, but it looks like Elon Musk is going to be the world's first minted trillionaire. So we'll see if that plays out in the next 3 or 4 years, if he can get that Tesla stock to double or get some kind of trillion-dollar compensation package through. We're going to see the first world's trillionaire, and a trillion, like these numbers start to kind of lose their meaning, but let's just hang on here. A trillion is a million. So if I took a briefcase and I put $1 million in it, which you can fit $1 million cash into a briefcase, I hand you one and then I hand you another about million, so 1 million briefcases with $1 million each in them, that's a trillion. Looks like we're going to have, Elon or Mr. Beast or somebody's going to be that trillionaire. And what did they do? Well, they own equity, guys. They don't hold cash. I'm sure Elon is 1% cash, if that. I'm quite sure he's 90% Tesla stock, maybe like 5% Bitcoin, maybe a little bit of gold and Doge, things like that. But guys, he faded cash. He doesn't hold cash. And not only does he not hold cash, but these billionaires, they borrow billions of dollars at a low interest rate, and then they buy their own stock with it, or they buy real estate with it. So it's this moral hazard now, really sinking its teeth in our country, where the one who borrows $1 million and buys gold, like non-productive clumps of atoms, gold, the one who borrows $1 million and buys gold does 50% a year, and then the one who borrows $1 million and starts a restaurant with a 13%, 12% profit margin against gold, they're working 80 hours a week to do negative 35% per year in real terms. And then people that borrow gold or borrow money and buy gold, or borrow money and buy Tesla, they don't get out of the jacuzzi to check their phone, and they do about 50% per year. So the ones who own the assets and do nothing are doing extremely well, and those that work really hard for dollars are being completely eviscerated, and they're doing very, very poorly. Kind of red pill you a little bit more on that. Let's say you make every 2 weeks, you get a paycheck, and we're going to call it $2,500 per paycheck. Well, when you get that $2,500, divide it by infinity, because that's how many dollars the feds can and will likely print, and you'll come up mathematically with zero. So anything divided by infinity is zero. If the Fed can and will, which I believe they are, it's a debt-based monetary system that requires that more and more be printed in perpetuity just to maintain where you are, never mind additional growth and productivity. That leaves us in a situation where when you get your $2,500 paycheck, it's 25 out of infinity, and so it's not worth anything. It's not worth anything until you take that $2,500 and you buy half an ounce of gold, because that's all you can afford now. In 2015, that got you like 2.5 ounces of gold. Now it's buying you a half ounce. So until you buy gold, or until you buy Bitcoin, or until you buy real estate or stocks, or, collectibles like Pokemon cards or something. Pokemon's really hot right now. Until you invest or speculate or trade, until you get that stuff, that paycheck into the market, it's worth zero. It's worth nothing. It's kind of like you're running on a treadmill, right? And you're running harder and harder for more and more currency, but the currency is falling faster than you can run for it. That's the road to serfdom. That's the road to modern day feudalism, neo-feudalism, slavery, however you want to word it. And I know these words seem hyperbolic and harsh, but guys, I'm trying to get you to step back and just see things for what they are. So you're running on this treadmill for more and more dollars, but you need more dollars because the price of everything keeps going up. So you start running harder and harder and harder. And then the guy who just borrows and buys assets sitting there like, yeah, run harder on the treadmill, run harder on the treadmill. And the more that the monetary oxygen gets sucked out of that room that you're running on the treadmill, the harder it gets to run. And the guy who is not running on the treadmill is accruing all the value, and the ones who are running on the treadmill for 100K a year are left buying 50,000 worth of actual stuff at the end of the year. And so savers are getting incinerated. Laborers, workers, anyone in what I call the laundry token real economy. Like, let's say I go out after this video and I offer to clean somebody's windows for $150. That's the laundry token economy. That's the real economy. It's getting killed and decimated and dominated by the financial system. And the financial system, that's the fake economy. The financial system, the fake economy, is completely destroying the real economy. It's stealing all of their labor, sucking it out of the room while they're running on the treadmill, so to speak, and then they're stuffing it into asset prices. And that's why you think you're looking at all these bubbles, but nothing is in a bubble because everything's in a bubble. So nothing's in a bubble. The only thing I'd say that's arguably in a bubble would be AI. That's kind of like, to me, a bit of a quasi bubble, just because I see a lot of financial engineering between like NVIDIA and OpenAI. Go ahead and type in on Google like OpenAI invest $100 billion into NVIDIA for chips. Go ahead and zoom in on that revolving door, that circular financing that's very reminiscent of late stage bubbles. But what do bubbles do, guys? They don't burst. They double, then burst. You know what I mean? So could be in a situation now where I'm calling the NASDAQ, which is right now at around 23,000. I'm calling that a bubble, but then we fast forward to Christmas and we're at 35,000 because, you know, as bubbles get frothier and more inflated, they really they go into what's called a blow off top, okay? Now, the Rothschilds would say you leave the last 10 to 15%, that blow off top, for the birds. So a good trader sells early, guys. A good trader gets in and then sells a little bit early. You don't want to be around for the blow off top because things don't really make a lot of sense. And the bottom could fall out at any minute. And I think we kind of could be in a situation like that with AI. Now, I do think AI is still the future, okay? It's still unstoppable. We're still heading for artificial general intelligence. Like, the robots are making robots, guys. They're going to increase productivity, okay? I see things like automated driving having a real boost to productivity and a boost to GDP, because if your car's driving, you can sit there and send emails. Basically, you can work during your commute, which gives everyone an extra like hour of work a day. So you know, AI is good for productivity. It's good for GDP. But do the revenues that AI is bringing in justify valuations? My answer to that would be no. And so I think we're kind of entering a situation where a lot of these AI companies, kind of like internet stocks in 1999 or 2000, they might look down and go, oh no, I'm walking on air. So, you know, we could be in a bubble in AI, but I want you guys to participate in this AI revolution, though. That's the thing. So if we see a correction in the NASDAQ, like let's say the NASDAQ sells 20% off its all-time recent highs, which would put it down at, we'll call it, NASDAQ falls to 17,500 or 18,000, you know, I'd say buy that dip. Because I think AI is still going to be very disruptive. Remember how like Bitcoin was kind of your chance to escape the matrix, so to speak? I think AI is the next opportunity. When we look at like the antebellum South, like way back in the days of slavery, what did it look like? It looked like a small group of very rich people, and they owned a bunch of slaves, which is abhorrent and morally diabolical. You know, it's horrible. But regardless, they owned the large unpaid workforces that were out there, you know, working the fields or what have you. So those people were very rich because they were able to extract all the value of the labor out of the people who weren't getting paid, the unpaid workforce. I think we're entering a similar dynamic in the next 10 to 20 years. I think whoever owns the shares, the companies that roll out with the armies of humanoid robots that are going to be mowing the lawn and babysitting and pet sitting and like doing all of the work, I think the robots are going to replace a lot of jobs. So the value of that cashier who has now been replaced with a U-scan, they're going to go to zero. But that value goes somewhere and it gets sucked into the share price of the company that owns the technology, the underlying technology. All value will be accrued to them. So I think we need to own the humanoid robots that are coming in the next 5 to 10 years. We need to front run that. And I think, you're going to do really well. So you're going to want to look at mega cap tech companies like Tesla, like Nvidia, even like Intel's kind of trying to make a comeback, although Trump's trying to take like a 10% stake in Intel, and that is fascism. But maybe Intel could be worth looking at. Meta, so Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg, guys, he's a lizard person. Like, I don't think he's a real human being. I mean, for real, I think he might be a reptilian alien or something. Maybe not. I'm just kind of poking fun at him, but he's heard that a lot, so I'm not being too hard on him. But he's still got that fire in him. He's a lot younger than Elon Musk, guys, and maybe hungrier. So, Elon, he's like 55. He'll be like 65. He'll be retirement age in the next decade or so. But Mark Zuckerberg, I think, is still going to be out there breaking necks and cashing checks, and he's still got that fire in him. So he's brilliant, So although I call him a reptilian, alien lizard person that lives in the hollow moon, the reality is he's brilliant, and I wouldn't want to bet against Meta, right? So you got Nvidia, you got Meta, you got like Microsoft and Apple, right? These mega cap tech, because guys, when it comes to stocks, you don't really need to, in my opinion, to be that discerned with kicking rocks and picking stocks. What you want to do with stocks is buy the dominant player in each space and just ride the lightning. So, for aviation, like Boeing, for instance, they're not going anywhere. Home Depot, Costco, Walmart, Amazon, Google. Google would be a great mega cap tech company. I think Google's going to own the humanoid robots that are also like sentient, like weird stuff, guys, like really weird stuff. Like they're going to create synthetics or maybe even like grow human cells and like create human intelligence in a lab, like weird stuff, guys. So take a look at the mega cap tech companies, and you're going to want to buy the winner in each space, the dominant player in each space. It's like hiring Michael Jordan onto your team. You want to build a dream team, and you just want to get ahead and stay ahead. Stocks, it's very much a zero-sum game, winner takes all. So you're going to want to own the company that is stealing market share from all the other companies, and that doesn't leave a lot of room for mid-cap stocks, small-cap stocks. Guys, like, I'm not a big fan of mid-cap and small-cap stocks. I believe if you want to do some gambling and speculation, you'd be better off in like crypto, something like that. So with stocks, keep an eye on those mega-cap companies. Gold is just screaming higher and higher. It's not good, guys. It's kind of like the canary in the coal mine telling you like something's wrong. We got silver running even harder than gold, and we've talked about that a lot on this channel, guys, how silver was the sleeper metal. Silver is waiting to catch up. Well, we're starting to see that. So silver starting to outpace gold a little bit. So silver likes to lay low for a while, kind of like a sleeper metal, and then every 9 or 15 years or so, it just goes into these insane runs. But again, it's kind of weird. It's kind of hard to call that a speculative bubble, because all silver and gold is trying to do is keep its value in the face of a falling currency, So I'm glad we've been constructive and bullish on things like physical gold, physical silver, physical platinum, mega cap tech companies, Bitcoin, some of those altcoins, some of those meme coins where we like to do our degenerate gambling and speculating. We've done quite well, you guys, and I hope to continue with that. But it's come, like I said, at a great cost. If you're making $200K per year now, you're kind of a brokey, you know what I mean? $1 million has completely lost its meaning, guys. 10% of American citizens are now millionaires. Look that up. If you own a dog box in California, you're already there. You own a tiny little 3-bedroom house somewhere, like you're already there. So $1 million ain't what it used to be. Remember that show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Now it's like becoming a rounding error for the elites accounting. Like they don't even care. Means it's completely losing its meaning in the face of the collapsing currency. So crazy, guys. So yeah, we talked a little bit about that poor dollar, talked a little bit about what's going on like with these bubbly, frothy markets. Are they really a bubble, or is it a currency collapse? Talking a little bit about these stocks that continue to hit new all-time highs, guys. That S&P 500 right now is 6,746, NASDAQ at 22,958, and Dow Jones at 46,745. Woof. But even with the 3 major stock indices doing well, they're still only up S&P 500 about 15% for this year to date, which is about the hurdle rate for any business, so pretty much the flat line. NASDAQ at 18% year to date, so pretty well flat, and that Dow Jones at only 10% for the year, around 11% year to date. So guys, the Dow Jones is actually falling. If the hurdle rate for a business with this amount of inflation is about 12%, which it is, that means if you're pursuing a project that yields below 12%, below the hurdle rate, it's not logical to pursue it. Basically, if I told you that inflation next year is going to be 12%, then you're not going to want to take on any projects that are going to promise you 5 to 6%, because inflation next year is going to be 12. You're going to need to do a project that at least does 12%, and then ideally you want to be clearing that hurdle rate. So any rational actor does not want to be making only 10% per year with this kind of inflation, with gold up 50% per year. And if you want to get real technical, guys, the stock market's actually been falling this year. So I know when you look at your stock app priced in US dollars, it looks to be going up and away. But if you price that in gold, stock market's actually falling. Put another way, if gold is up year to date, which it is about 50% today, in the stock market, like Dow Jones only up 10, it means in real terms the Dow Jones is down 40% this year. I know that's a tough pill to swallow, and a lot of people don't want to agree with that. There's going to be a lot of psyops in the headlines and media trying to tell you that what I'm telling you out here isn't true. But the reality is, if gold, the stable unit of account, the non-productive clumps of atoms that aren't productive, don't spin off any yield or dividend, like they don't do anything, they're just clumps of atoms. If clumps of atoms that compete with the dollar are up 50% this year, and that's the flat line, that's the measuring stick for the pool, then anything that's not up more than that is actually down in real terms, and that's exactly what's happening. So if you had been in cash all year, like let's say you had a savings account right now with $10,000 in it on January 1st, we come back right now, it'd still be about 10,000, maybe paid like 1% in interest, but the inflation on that 10,000 has been between like 12 and 50%, depending on if you want to go with like the hurdle rate for business or just what benchmarks like gold are doing. I like to use gold. So if gold's up 50% and your assets up 10%, your assets actually in real terms down 40%. If you're in cash and gold is up 50%, your cash is now down 50%. It's kind of how I look at it, guys. I take that gold chart on the 100-year time frame, I invert it. That's the dollar chart in real terms. It's not this DXY. You know, we can talk about the DXY right now, the dollar chart being below 100. It is weak when compared to other currencies, but again, it's compared to like peso and won and euro and ruble and a bunch of other currencies that are worth nothing. So the Fed can and will likely print infinity dollars, and this makes your paycheck worth nothing and sends all these assets that we've been discussing for the last few years to the moon. So looking into my hazy crystal ball, what do I think is happening? Well, I think we went through a fascist takeover in 2020. That's when the Fed added like 40% to the money supply and then gave you a stimmy check for $1,400. That stimmy kind of ruined your life, because in a way, yeah, they gave you $1,400, but the day they did that, your goalpost for retirement, if you're like a millennial my age, went from probably 5 million by the time I get to retirement. It's probably what I'll need. But that was probably the case pre-stimmy, pre-COVID. About $5 million would have been a comfy retirement. And as soon as they gave me the $1,400 stimmy and added 40% to the money supply, that goalpost for my retirement became closer to $8 to $10 million. So they sold you out for $1,400. I'm sure a lot of people just spent it on widgets and trinkets and like things that aren't really going to move the needle for them. And now they're paying the price for it. Instead of needing 5 million to retire, now they just need a modest 10 million to retire, guys. So you see what's happening every time the Fed and the Treasury draws future consumption into the president and spends it in the form of debt. It kind of enslaves future generations, and we've been seeing that, guys. So woof. And what do I see in my hazy crystal ball? Well, the Fed started cutting interest rates, and that's going to make all these problems I've just discussed with you a lot worse. It's like pouring gasoline on a fire. If the Fed and Treasury really wanted to get inflation under control, they'd be raising interest rates. We'd be seeing bond yields spike. We'd see rates and yields a lot higher. We'd see the dollar a lot higher, but you're getting the opposite. Fed's cutting rates, guys. Fed is cutting rates. So all these problems we've talked about are about to get worse by every indication, which is pretty pathetic, pretty sad. So this is how empires die, guys. They They don't deflate. The psyop growing up for me has been, oh, everything's going to crash. The stock market's going to crash. Yeah, it crashed up. That was the psyop. They told you, be afraid of deflation. Be worried it'll crash down. It's crashed up. We're crashing. Oh, yeah, the markets are crashing, guys. We've been talking about it for 3 years. Up. But nobody's going to come out and tell you that. Nobody wants to come out and tell you that infinity goes in the denominator for dollars, so your paycheck is worth zero. Nobody wants it. And you're like, well, where'd the missing value go? Check the stock market. It's already been stuffed into Goldman Sachs share price. Go ahead and take a look. So I'm still bullish on markets. I think we'll get 1 or 2 more interest rate cuts going into the end of the year. And then I think we're going to have several more interest rate cuts for 2026, depending on unemployment, right? Like, so if the unemployment starts to go up, that's going to be justification for the Fed to cut more aggressively. And then if the economy is strong and unemployment actually continues to come down and job numbers remain really strong, that's actually going to be bad for markets, because it's going to force the Fed to push interest rate cuts off into the future, and markets are going to have to reprice themselves for that. So you're actually going to see a little bit of deflation. But deflation is not the boogeyman. Inflation is. Hyperinflation. These are the things that you should be concerned about. Currency collapses. Gold, which maintains its value, crashing up means your dollar, that is your labor, is crashing down. AI has something to do with that, automation and AI, but a lot of it too is just drawing the future consumption in the present and spending it. The Fed and Treasury are doing a good job of that, and that's credit creation. But guys, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to throw one more little red pill in your mouth before I head out for the day. Credit creation also comes from commercial banks. So let's say I own a window cleaning business and I'd like to raise $10,000. I go down to the street to JP Morgan or Bank of America or Wells Fargo. I ask them for a $10,000 line of credit for my business, or a loan, something of that effect. They're different. Lines of credits and loans are different, but let's not get caught up on that. Let's just stick to the idea. I need to borrow $10,000 to grow my window cleaning business. Let's say I did it at Bank of America. They're going to say, okay, you've been approved. 10,000, enter. And now they've loaned you $10,000. And you might be thinking, okay, well, that $10,000 that they just gave me, it came from somewhere in the back, right? In their vault, they had 10. No, guys, it was a digital entry in an Excel spreadsheet. They did 10,000, hit enter. Now you owe them $10,000 back plus interest. So they borrowed in fake money. They did a digital ledger. They just entered in the money you now owe them. They didn't have to work for that. They don't have to backstop it or use any of their existing assets to really vouch for that. They just did a credit creation, good old-fashioned credit creation. 10,000, hit enter. Now I owe that person $10,000, that bank $10,000 plus interest, meaning there's always like this rat race for more dollars than actually exist in the system. And that's how they keep the small businesses running on the treadmill for dollars that are worth nothing. That's alchemy, guys. They created gold, okay? Sir Isaac Newton, he devoted a big part of his life. He's the guy that invented algebra. We've all heard of Isaac Newton, right? If not, you gotta catch up. But Sir Isaac Newton, he invented algebra, like made all these great contributions to like physics, and he did like when an object at rest stays at rest unless an outside force acts on it. The laws of motion, like that was all Sir Isaac Newton. And he spent a lot of his time trying to figure out how to turn regular elements like wood or stone or whatever, this shirt, into gold. Like he tried to turn like mercury into gold, like lead into gold, like anything he could actually turn into gold is like the golden goose. That's the holy grail, because you can take things that aren't valuable, turn them into something valuable, and sell them. That's alchemy. It's never worked. Thank God for the gold holders, because if somebody could actually pull off alchemy, the gold price would collapse. But there is no machine that poops out gold coins. There's no geological process on Earth that creates more gold. It comes from stars going supernova and exploding. That's how like the universe mines its gold, by stars exploding, 2 neutron stars colliding, like insane physics and conditions to create new gold. Stars blowing up, basically the sun. The sun would have to go supernova and explode to make more gold. So Sir Isaac Newton was always trying to find a way to create this gold. There is no way to do that until he discovered the South Sea bubble. Type in on Google, South Seas bubble, Isaac Newton. You'll see that Isaac Newton realized the banks had in fact created gold out of thin air. They had in fact created alchemy because they could do double entry accounting. They could do credit creation. And as soon as Isaac Newton figured out that the banks and financiers had figured out with the stock market how to essentially create wealth from nothing, he got super involved in that bubble. It did collapse though, so I think Sir Isaac Newton was not a great trader, not a great speculator. I think he bought the top of the South Sea bubble and then it collapsed, but the point still stands. As soon as Isaac Newton found out that the banks had discovered alchemy, he went ahead and went in, head first with what they were doing. So we're in a similar situation today, guys. Alchemy is real. It's not me turning mercury into gold or turning, aluminum into gold. It's banks telling you you've been approved for your business loan. They type it in. Now you owe them that amount of money plus interest. It's a psyop, guys. It's a ruse. So banks don't want you to know about credit creation. Fed doesn't want you to know about credit creation. Treasury doesn't want you to know about credit creation because it allows them to create gold out of nothing. It allows them to enslave you with very labor-intensive strokes of the keyboard, and they don't want to talk about it, guys, but you're living it. Okay, look at these real estate prices. Look at these stock markets. Like, look at how much your pay is going up versus non-productive clumps of atoms like gold. So, woof, But we're gonna be all right. We're gonna keep everything on an even keel. We've been discerned. We've been over the target. We're gonna keep going that way. In the meantime, I still like mega cap tech companies. So we kind of discussed some of those. I still like companies like Costco and Home Depot, Procter and Gamble. I'm just throwing companies out you could take a look at. I still like physical precious metals, physical silver, platinum, Bitcoin. Been big fans of Bitcoin on this channel, done extremely well there. And then if you want to do a little bit of speculating, go into those meme coins like Pepe or, MOG or something like that, guys. So we're going to keep going, all right? We're going to carry on with the plan of life. I'm going to be coming out a lot more often to give you guys the answers to the test as best as I see fit. And we're just going to keep going, all right? Hope this video finds you doing well. Like, subscribe, share, comment, whatever. You guys are awesome. And we're just going to keep going, all right? Till next time.